Okay, I will now pass it over to Juliana very quickly. Juliana, who is the Excel Study Research Coordinator at the University of Calgary, is coming today with the presentation focused on exercise for those living with and beyond cancer. Juliana, we appreciate your time so very, very much. Thank you for being here with us. And I will stop sharing and pass the screen over to you.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you to Philomena and Chris for allowing me to do this presentation. It's so nice to be able to connect with people who are interested in the study and interested in learning a bit more about exercise. So yeah, I will be talking about exercise for individuals living with and beyond cancer. My name is Juliana. I am a clinical exercise physiologist and the Excel Study Research Coordinator. An exercise physiologist, for people who don't know, we have a background in kinesiology or exercise science, so a bachelor's in that, and then often many will continue on to get their master's in exercise science. And so exercise physiologists are able to work with people who have chronic disease or cancer or have certain injuries. And we use exercise to improve fitness and function. So that's what an exercise physiologist is. And Dr. Nicole Koulos-Reed is the Excel primary investigator. And we'll do a land acknowledgement. So we acknowledge that we live and work within the traditional territories of Indigenous people across Canada. We recognize the land as an act of reconciliation and gratitude to those whose territory we reside on or are visiting, and acknowledge the many First Nations, Inuit, and Métis who have lived in and cared for these lands for generations. Okay, so this won't be a long presentation, probably about 20 minutes or so. We'll go through the evidence for exercise and cancer. I'll talk a little bit about behavior change, and then I will share some of the exercise resources that are available to all of you. All right. So we know that cancer treatments are becoming more effective, and therefore we really need to work to improve quality of life long term. So we're hoping to provide supportive services to better support individuals living with and beyond cancer who are often living with side effects for years beyond their treatment. So things like fatigue, reduced physical function, impacts to mental health, and ultimately impacting quality of life. So our lab's aim is to provide evidence that will encourage cancer care systems across Canada to integrate exercise into standard cancer care. We want to ensure that patients are provided with appropriate resources to support their physical activity needs. So we have years of research showing the benefits of exercise for those living with and beyond cancer. And really importantly, we know it does not undermine the treatment. Now, where a person is on this continuum will dictate what kinds of goals we have and the kinds of exercise prescription we would use. So for someone who is pre-treatment, we're looking to improve physical functions as much as possible to reduce the potential decline as you're going through treatments or surgery. And then during treatment, we're looking to maintain or reduce the amount of decline. Post-treatment, we could be working with rehab services like physio or occupational therapy, and we use exercise to improve fitness and function. And we're looking to get you back to doing activities that you love to do. And then survivorship and advanced care, we're looking to improve or maintain quality of life. So we have, like I said, lots of evidence and research into exercise and why it's important. And so we have here in this table levels of strong evidence for exercise improving certain things like cancer-related fatigue, which we'll talk about a little bit later, quality of life, physical function, mental health, and then for those who have lymphedema, it can positively impact lymphedema as well. And you can see we have moderate evidence right now for bone health and improvements to sleep. Now, moderate evidence doesn't mean that it isn't good evidence. It's just we need more studies to look at these sorts of factors. So I want to talk specifically about cancer-related fatigue because regardless of tumor type, patients are often impacted by it. And it's actually the #1 reported side effect, but it's really, really hard to treat because there's so many factors that can influence it. So you can see over here the vicious cycle of fatigue, where you have less energy to move, therefore the sedentary behavior increases. This causes deconditioning, which is reduced fitness and that muscle loss or atrophy. Um, and then that can cause even more fatigue. So you have fatigue even after doing just daily activities. And so then it keeps spiraling down and down and down. Now, what we do know is exercise can help stop that spiral. So if exercise is appropriately prescribed, it can improve fatigue levels. So what does appropriately prescribed mean? It means start low and progress slow. So start a little bit easier than you potentially think you need to. Reflect and think about how did that make me feel during? How does it make me feel afterwards? And if things are feeling good, then you can slowly start to increase that intensity. And we'll talk more about how to do that later in the presentation. And we also know that exercise can have a really positive impact on mental health. So it can improve mood, it can reduce risk of anxiety and depression, it can improve body image. We know that it also improves self-efficacy, which is like self-confidence. I've heard some of our participants talk about how they joined our exercise program and they weren't too sure about it. They didn't have confidence that they would be able to do it, but they made it through the 12 weeks. And then that confidence that grew from being able to accomplish that translated to them saying they wanted to try other things in their community, like even an art class. So something outside of, exercise or physical activity, it translated to other realms in their life, that ability to go, well, I'm going to try and I'm going to see what happens. I've also heard participants talk about how exercise or these classes can bring back a sense of control. So in a time when participants or patients may have little control, where you're told, what appointments you need to go to, what treatments you have to get, which are all very important things, but it does take that sense of control away from you. So when you're engaging in exercise, you get to decide when you do it, how much you do it, how intense you're working, and what kind of activity you're doing. And that can be really impactful and beneficial for mental health. So I'm sure many of you have heard about the amazing challenge trial. Our lab isn't associated with this, but they had such incredible results that helps, everyone working in exercise oncology because they're really pushing things forward. So the challenge trial published their results in the summer of last year. And so they followed nearly 1,000 patients with stage 2 to 3 colorectal cancer over 3 years. And so what they found with structured exercise is there was a reduced risk of death by 37%, recurrence or new cancers by 28%, and an 8-year overall survival improvement of 7%. So my supervisor, Dr. Koulos Reed, said if a drug trial was to have these kinds of results, everybody would be wanting to prescribe that drug. So exercise isn't just a want or a nice to have, it is a must have. It should be integrated into cancer care. Okay, so in terms of guidelines, so we have, like I said, years of research. We based exercise guidelines and recommendations for people living with and beyond cancer. These have been developed from researchers across the world. So in general, the recommendations are to get 90 minutes of moderate intensity activity a week. We're also aiming for 2 days of strength training per week and flexibility on most days a week. However, if I was to give you a piece of paper with all of this information on it, people might feel a little bit overwhelmed. Often people who come to our study, our program, will say, they feel overwhelmed. They don't know where to start. What's safe? What should I be feeling? How do I know if I've pushed myself too far? And when we think about the activity levels of people who don't have chronic conditions, who don't have cancer, they're not great. The Canadian population really needs to try to increase activity levels. So when there's nothing else on someone's plate health-wise, and they're still not able to achieve recommendations, to then go to people living with cancer who might be on treatment or even beyond and say, we want you to get more active and here are the guidelines. It's a lot to ask. So that's why individualization and tailoring is so important for success. So considering your fitness level, your age, disease status, what kind of social support do you have around you? What kinds of barriers are you potentially facing? And this is where working with an exercise physiologist or kinesiologist or joining a guided exercise program can be quite helpful in providing that support. However, you don't need to work with someone, you don't need to join an exercise program. The key is just to move more. We really want to simplify it, and building the habit of just getting in some exercise minutes daily is really important. So I'm sure everyone's heard, if you park just a little bit of ways away from the grocery store and walk those couple extra minutes to get to the store, that does add up. And a lot of people think, well, how can 2 minutes of extra exercise be beneficial? But there is evidence that those exercise minutes build up and they do have a really big impact. 5 to 10 minutes of exercise daily is better than sitting and doing nothing. So it does add up. Another factor is doing what you enjoy. So picking an activity that you're going to stick to because you like it is the best activity versus joining a particular program or saying, I have to do walking or I have to do biking. It's whatever you're going to stick with. That's the most important thing, just moving more. So in general, our guidelines beyond those specific guidelines we talked about is, as I mentioned before, starting low and progressing slow. And this is dependent on your health and your prior fitness levels. And as long as you're cleared to exercise or start moving, then just starting with something easy. I'm going to flip to this slide quickly just to chat about how to quantify that. So we have our rating of perceived effort or exertion scale from 0 to 10. Where 0, you're on the couch relaxing, not doing anything, and 10, you're putting in the maximal effort you possibly could. You couldn't sustain that amount of effort for very long. So when we're talking about starting to engage in some activity and starting low, depending on how you feel, what your energy levels are, you might be starting at a 2, maybe a 3, working up to maybe a 4 or a 5. You can push into that 6 and 7, after doing a few weeks of some movement and seeing how you feel. But you really don't need to push up into these higher numbers here to get benefit. It's more about consistent, sustained activity, sort of at this 3 to 5 range. But again, thinking about how you're feeling, what energy levels you're coming in with, and then adjusting based on that. So I will talk more about our exercise programs and sort of how we prescribe and what we do. But we always say, if you're able to just show up and do a little bit of movement, that's better than nothing. So if you're coming in and looking at this energy scale and your energy levels at a 2, but you want to do a little bit of movement, you can start at that 1, 2, 3 sort of range for a few minutes, and then that's your activity for the day, and that's completely fine. And then making sure you listen to your body. So you are the expert in your body and how you feel. So it's really important to reflect, as I mentioned, about how you're feeling during the movement, how you feel right after, and then maybe the day after as well. So I had one participant join our program and put in a lot of effort, worked really hard. But then at the end of the class, she said she had to nap for 3 hours. So I said, that's okay. If that works for your life, then that's okay if you want to do that. But if you don't want to nap for 3 hours, then how do we adjust the exercise, adjust that intensity so that you can carry on with the rest of your day? Because we recognize that everyone has their life beyond exercise, and you have to still be able to engage in that. So it is a bit of trial and error, and it is reflecting and adjusting based on how you feel and how you react. So, when I talk about exercise, some people might be immediately turned off of the idea. And that's okay. Not all movement has to be done in a gym. And like I said, the best kind of exercise is the kind that you enjoy enough to stick with so it becomes part of your lifestyle. And so that you can identify as a mover. Um, so if you start in a place where you want to, or if you're in a place where you want to start moving more, this circle might be helpful to take a peek at. So starting with finding your motivation. So, do you have any goals for yourself? Like maybe it's keeping up with grandkids or your kids. Maybe it's walking on the golf course instead of taking the buggy or the golf cart. And it doesn't have to be fitness related necessarily. It can be lifestyle related. And exercise is just going to help you get to that place where you can achieve your goal. Commit to progress. So, thinking about the little milestones along the way towards that big goal that you've created for yourself. Because that goal that's way down there is sometimes a bit abstract or hard to imagine. How on earth am I going to get there? So, setting up some stepping stones or little milestones is important to be able to feel like you've accomplished something and you're getting a little bit further and further and further towards that goal. Making sure you reflect on your progress, and taking time to adjust as needed. Um, Life happens. So, if you are kind of taken off course of working towards your goal and, you wanted to walk 5 days a week and you've been starting with 10-minute bouts once a week. Maybe you're dropping it down to 5 because something else has happened. So being flexible and being able to adjust based on what is going on in your life. Number 3 is making it social. So it can be helpful to have a workout or a walking buddy. Someone who can help you stay accountable. And if you don't have that person who can move with you, even just sharing and talking about your goals with other people might help you overcome some barriers or help you problem solve, as barriers will likely come up. So joining an exercise class or even sharing with someone in this group potentially about what your exercise goals are. Saying it out loud, I always struggle with that when I'm setting goals because it makes it real. But it doesn't mean that you can't shift or change or adjust the goal. It just means that you're sharing it and you want someone to help you keep accountable. And then planning for barriers. So, like I said, life is happen, and it's okay to get off track. However, it's important to have a contingency plan for things that may come up. So, if you have appointments that you can't miss during, if you're joining an exercise, that's okay. But is there something that you can watch on YouTube? There's lots of different resources on YouTube so that you can still get some movement in, but it just doesn't look like an exercise class that day, and that's okay. Um, and then celebrating your progress. So look back at how far you've come, evaluate what's working, what isn't working, and adjusting as needed. So hopefully these ideas might help increase your confidence in your ability to move, and help you identify as a mover or exerciser or swimmer or walker or whatever it is. And once you center part of your identity around movement, it will just become part of your lifestyle. And so that was a very, very brief sort of introduction to behavior change techniques and considerations. I encourage you to, I can send these resources as well in an email, and then it can be shared if that's appropriate. If you can't scan the QR code, but we have a Thriver manual. It's a 90-page manual that's free. And so it talks about all of these different things, how exercise is important, different exercise guidelines, but it also talks about behavior change. So if this is something you want to dive into a little bit more, this could be a great resource to take a look at. So now we'll go into a couple of our free resources beyond that Thriver manual. So some of you may have heard of Wellspring. It's available for people in Alberta and Ontario. You can become a member for free. They offer in-person and online exercise classes, and they do a lot more beyond that. I think they have art classes. They talk about finances. They have a ton of different resources. For their exercise classes, they are delivered by trained exercise professionals. And you can, again, scan the QR code, or the website is wellspring.ca, and you can learn a lot more there. If anyone happens to be in BC, I don't have a slide on this, but Inspire Health also offers, it's very similar to Wellspring, so lots of different educational content, seminars, and then they also have exercise classes as well. And I don't know if it's limited to just people in BC, but it's a great resource to take a look at. So I can include that in the resources that I send over. And then we have our YouTube channel, so the Health and Wellness Lab YouTube channel. We have, there it is, our 12-week exercise oncology program. So there are 12 1-hour-long exercise classes that are free for anybody to access. Obviously, we suggest that, again, provided your healthcare team is okay with you engaging in activity, this might be an appropriate tool for you. We've also started to translate some of our materials. So we have 12 weeks programs in Punjabi. We have one class in Cantonese. And then we also have lots of other educational content on our YouTube channel that, again, is free for anyone to access. And then I'll briefly talk about the ACE and EXCEL studies. So the ACE study is for those living in more urban centers in Alberta. And then, and it was started in 2017. It was very successful. They recruited over 2,500 participants over, I think it was about 5 years. And then the EXCEL study was built off of ACE. The researchers recognize that often resources are available in more of those urban centers, and then people who live rural and remote don't have the same kind of access. So that's where EXCEL came in. Most of our programming is done online over Zoom, and anyone across the country can join. Particularly, we're trying to reach those who are more rural and remote. For those who live in cities, as long as they don't have access to other resources or exercise programs, they would still be able to join EXCEL. So reach out even if you're in a city, and then I can direct you to a program that already exists, or you could join EXCEL. So both ACE and EXCEL, they are free programs. They're 12 weeks long. It's for anyone who is pre-treatment, on treatment, or within 3 years of treatment completion. There is a caveat to that. For anyone who still experiences treatment-related side effects or cancer-related side effects, please still reach out to us because I would just send a letter to your healthcare team and ask for basically a referral indicating that those side effects would benefit from you engaging in exercise. Our next programs are starting in April. They will run, we still have to set the dates, but about mid-April to early July. So please reach out, and then we can get you on our contact list. There's a bit of a process for registration. And because it is still part of research, we have consent and some intake forms and questionnaires for you to do. But like I said, please reach out earlier and then we can get you organized. So to reach us, you can email wellnesslab@ucalgary.ca, and I'll share that again in an email after this. So the programs are 12 weeks. The classes run twice a week and they're 60 minutes long. We combine cardio, resistance training. We also work on balance and flexibility. For our online programs, we have some additional safety factors. So you have your lead instructor who's teaching the class, but we also have a secondary person called a moderator. And they are watching the screen at all times, making sure that everyone is okay. So when you join our classes, we cap it at 15, and we ask that everyone does have their camera on. The instructors will make their screen big. They'll spotlight themselves, so you're just seeing the instructor. But for the moderator, they're able to see everyone and help with cueing, but also make sure that everyone is safe while they're exercising. And we also make sure that we have everyone's physical address in case we needed to send emergency services their way. Classes are, like I said, between 8 and 15 people. So these are common questions or concerns that people have mentioned. So I've never done an exercise class before. Do I need previous experience to join? Absolutely not. We will meet you where you're at. We start with the fundamentals to make sure you're moving with great form, and then it's a progressive program, so we build off of that. We always have a range of abilities and experiences in our class, and we try to meet everyone where they are. Our exercise professionals, they've been trained by us rigorously in exercise oncology, but also in being able to modify the program. So even though everyone is following the same program, someone might be doing a full squat versus someone might be doing a sit to stand from a chair. So it might look a little bit different for everybody. Another question might be, I have no equipment. Can I still participate? We will use whatever you have available. So if it is soup cans for weights or books in a backpack, we will use whatever you've got. As long as you have a safe space to work out in and a bit of distance between you and your screen so we can see you moving, we'll just, work with whatever tools you have available. I'm on treatment and I don't feel great a few days after. Should I join now or should I join later? That's really up to you. So we have had people who, we've had a lot of people who are on treatment, and they find that they still get benefit out of it. It can help reduce the severity of some of the side effects, versus some people would prefer to just get treatment over with and then join us where they're feeling a bit better and they can maybe see bigger improvements potentially. But I will say that I did have one participant who was on treatment, felt rotten most of the time, and mostly did just chair-based movements, sometimes just watched the class and then joined the stretching at the end. And the reason that they joined was because it got them out of bed and it was a social thing to do, and it brought joy. So the class can mean so many different things for different people and depending on what their goals are and sort of where they are. And then finally, I have a bad hip. I can't get on and off the floor. Is this program right for me? So we do have one circuit of exercises at the end that is floor-based, but we always provide modifications that can be done from the chair or standing. So you don't need to get on and off the floor. Pretty much every class that we run, there's always people who prefer a standing or a chair-based exercise. So that's completely fine and it's always provided.